It's time to meet the man behind the manga. Welcome to my interview with Malik, the creator of Dragon Ball New Age. This is an exciting interview for me because I've been friends with Malik for a long time, but this is the first time we've been able to sit down and discuss his Dragon Ball New Age Definitive Edition. Dragon Ball New Age has taken the Dragon Ball community by storm over the last 7 months since it's premiered, and a lot of people are falling in love with it and sharing it. When you look at this manga, it's easy to see why it's so popular. The artwork is beautiful, the action's over the top, the characters are multifaceted, and the humor and lightheartedness in Toriyama's original work comes through, which is often something that gets lost in Dragon Ball fan manga. So I'm a big admirer of that, and these are just a few of the things that set this manga apart. So I thought it would be great to speak with Malik and ask how he feels about the success of his manga and discuss the source of his inspiration for Dragon Ball New Age, the creation process, answer fan questions, and discuss the business aspects of what it's like to be a fan manga author and the struggles of an artist. I think in this interview, you will learn a lot. And if you're an aspiring artist, you may receive inspiration for your own fan manga. So let's dive in to this Dragon Ball interview. Okay, so I'm here with Malik, the creator of Dragon Ball New Age, and this is a little meet and greet. So Malik can meet the new fans that he's created with his new definitive edition of Dragon Ball New Age. Just ask a few questions. I posted what would you like to ask Malik on Twitter, and I got a bunch of questions there as well. So a little bit of mine, a little bit of theirs, and it's just going to be a fun little interview with the creator of this amazing new Dragon Ball manga. So Malik, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now I want to ask you to start off, in your own words, what is Dragon Ball New Age?
Oh boy. I would like to say that like any Dragon Ball fan who grew up watching like the original, like the Ocean dub, we only had that short run of episodes here in America, and then like it would all restart over. So we had that short run of episodes and a couple of the movies. Like any fan, I just wanted to see the series continue. At the time, I didn't really know what like Dragon Ball GT was. The internet, for me anyway, was sort of in its infancy. So I only had a couple of pictures to go off of. I didn't know anything about Dragon Ball GT, and Dragon Ball New Age was just sort of like, as even from its beginning, was just sort of a love letter to the original series. That it was one of the few things that really resonated with me as a child, and even growing up into a teenager. There were I was always like a big fan of like comic books and superheroes and stuff, and Dragon Ball was like nothing else that I'd ever seen before. It just touched me on like so many different levels. Like it got me into martial arts. It like made me realize that it's hard to explain, but
Yeah.
But no, Dragon Ball New Age, in the simplest of terms, it's me doing a love letter to Akira Toriyama and his series, and trying to make, I guess, as faithful and as respectful a continuation of that series as I possibly can.
Now, for those who are new to the series and have never read your previous editions of Dragon Ball New Age, tell us, when did this start?
The very, very original draft that I did of Dragon Ball New Age was called Dragon Ball Z New Age, because, again, like I said, I didn't even know what Dragon Ball GT was at the time. That original like little run of like just personal comics that I was doing, like I didn't even have the internet at the time. Little run was in 2001, long time ago. And it wasn't until 2005 that I started redoing the series the very first time, redoing the draft, and that's when I started posting it to DeviantArt. I had a very small but dedicated fan base on DeviantArt when it came to DB New Age, and it's just sort of like sparked from there. But yeah, the original iteration, the very first draft of this story took place in 2001.
Wow. So you've been at this for 18 years.
18 years, almost 2 decades.
Wow. So here's my inside the actors studio question. I want you to get deep or silly, however you want to respond. Who is Malik?
Well, if you've looked at my YouTube banner in the last couple of weeks, it would say that I am a Lovecraftian horror subsisting entirely on caffeine and donuts.
Okay. Where does the name Malik come from?
The first name, Malik, has a couple of different sources. The first source was it was a name that I had when I was in high school. I was in a band. That was my stage name, was Malik.
Hmm.
When I started getting more into anime and manga, one of my favorite characters from the Yu-Gi-Oh anime and manga was Merrick Ishtar, but in the manga he was known as Malik Ishtar. And him being my favorite character, I kind of adopted that name. But my surname Torihane is a Japanese portmanteau of like Toriyama and the word Hane, which is feather. It's supposed to mean bird feather. Like Toriyama's studio is Bird Studio. And since I'm not truly affiliated, but trying to be faithful to Dragon Ball and the series, I'm a feather on the wing of that bird. So that's where the name Torihane comes from.
I see. So it's a little bit of your own personal life experience, a little bit of Western culture, and then Eastern culture, and paying homage to Toriyama.
Indeed.
Okay. So what makes your Dragon Ball manga different from others?
That's hard for me to say. I mean, I guess I'm speaking from sort of a bias opinion here because I've been doing it for so long, and it's kind of weird for me to, I don't know, I guess pat myself on my own back or whatever. But I would like to think that unlike a lot of different fan manga that I see, like the two Dragon Ball AFs, the one by Toyotaro and Young Gigi, and even a lot of like the newer ones, they all seem to follow the anime a lot more closely, especially the AF series. The AF series like has a lot of connective tissue to the anime, like bringing back like movie villains like Broly and having things like Janemba and so on and such forth, and even Toyotaro's AF manga, like when Goku first appears, he's having sparring matches with Pikkon, who is an anime only character. So like a lot of the fan mangas that I see, like I said, they have a lot of connective tissue with the anime, not so much the manga. I went into a different direction and decided to follow more closely the manga instead of the anime. So I kind of felt like, there's the whole canon, canon, non-canon debate when it comes to Dragon Ball. It's ongoing, and nobody's right, nobody's wrong. But in my opinion, the anime is infallible. That is the original source. That is the true canon of Dragon Ball. Is that original manga? The all of its connections with Dr. Slump, the original manga, Dragon Ball minus, the stuff that was done 100% by Akira Toriyama. That stuff for me is the definitive canon of Dragon Ball. Okay. And it's easier for me to stick to that than to try and mix and match and pick and choose what in the contrived, contradictory anime will fit into that, fits into the story.
Right. So, and from an artistic perspective, the anime was an adaptation animated by different people. So there's different art styles involved, and you're basing it right on Toriyama's original drawings.
Well, and it's not even just the art and everything, but like, when it comes to Toei Animation and like they have all the filler content and stuff. So not 100% of the anime is directly adapted from Akira Toriyama's, because there's now stuff that's added by stuff that he didn't do. Even if he provided like, some story elements for the filler, or, you know, art and pieces here and there, it's still not 100% his, unlike the manga. The manga is 100% his. The art, the story, the writing, everything about that is 100% his. So I picked that instead of going with what everybody, with what the majority of people had, which was the anime.
Mm.
I'm personally a bigger fan of the manga than I am the anime, and doing Dragon Ball New Age is like gave me a greater appreciation for the manga over the anime.
Right, and you have to study his paneling and in the arrangement of panels and the way he does his speech bubbles and everything else, the pacing of how he goes from panel to panel, scene to scene. Is there anything else that you have studied and learned from Toriyama's manga?
Well, anybody who's read any of the original iterations of Dragon Ball New Age knows that like my storytelling used to be very, very light on comedy. It was very action oriented, like really heavily action oriented. Um, I mean, in the version previous to what the definitive edition was doing, just to show you a cut comparison, in the very first draft that I did of Dragon Ball New Age, Rigger showed up on page 1. He was already on the planet. He had already landed. He'd already confronted Vegeta. And like by page 2 or 3, we were already starting the fight. So,
Hmm.
we got just like started right in right fast. And then from the 2005 to 2015 versions, he shows up by about page 3. So we paced it out a little bit, but it's still everything was happening super duper fast. In the definitive edition, he doesn't show up until after page 20. So there's a lot of
Okay.
things that are happening, to set up the story, to ease people into the story, instead of just, okay, this is what's happening, boom, throw you right down into it.
Right, right. And
You
it's just
know,
like a gradual buildup of tension.
exactly. Even though like I feel like I'm very strong in the action department. I have a mind and a mind for their action visuals and choreography and stuff, being in martial arts and being a former professional wrestler. I know different things about like action choreography, but it's the other things that give Dragon Ball the charm, the comedy, the interactions between characters that, don't involve fighting, certain things of that nature. And that's what my definitive edition, was trying to capture more of, which is why, like I said, like Rigger didn't show up until 20 pages in,
Mm.
because I wanted to introduce more characters. I wanted to, show what their lives were like during the time of peace since the end of Dragon Ball GT.
Sure. Well, I feel
And
like it adds a lot to the story. It
it
creates
did.
an environment, like a world
Yeah.
these people are living in.
I mean, a lot of people, complimented me, saying that they really appreciated me showing what everybody was up to before, all the stuff hit the fan.
Right. Now, I got a question about the creative process on
Hmm.
Twitter. And before I get to that, I want to ask you, what is the manga creation process for you? How do you go from a single blank page to a finished chapter of 32 pages that then gets published online and shared with everybody across the internet?
The first step is conceptualization. I mean, for the most part, right now, we're basing it off of the original versions, the few original versions that we had of Dragon Ball New Age. So we have a basic template of what we want to do. We just want to expand on it. So at first, we take a look at what we were doing before in the original drafts. And me and my crew of script writers, I have 3 script assistants that help me and assist me with dialogue and such. We sit down, It can usually take anywhere between a day and 3 days to hash out a script, depending on the complexity, length, whether or not like chapter 7 we just finished scripting earlier yesterday. That script pretty much only took us about a day because it's mostly just a giant fight scene.
Mm.
So fight scenes where there's like very limited dialogue, it's much easier to script that out and much quicker. But like I said, between a day and 3 days, it takes me and my script assistants to hash out a script. That's typically when I'll email it to you for any kind of revisions and things of that nature for you to go over, because I very much trust your input.
Hmm.
And once we get that back, that's when I go into penciling. Penciling, usually when I have a script to go off of, it's a lot easier for me to visualize what's going on. Sometimes just with any artist, you'll develop, artist block. So if I can sit down and take the time that I really want to with it, I can usually plow out a chapter in a couple of days, but sometimes it can take me up to a week to do pencils. Again, it also depends on, am I doing mostly stationary shots? Am I doing a lot of action set pieces? Something that I kind of picked up from Toriyama, because I know that it's something that bugs him a lot. And if you look through the manga, any of his mangas actually, you'll notice this a lot. Toriyama doesn't like to draw cities, and neither do I, because cities are very labor intensive, because everything has to be kind of like, it has to be straight, it has to be uniform. So there's a lot of ruler work and line work when it comes to drawing cities, which is why he tends to draw a lot of his things out in the wilderness and wastelands and plateaus, because they're a lot easier to draw because you don't have to pay attention to positioning as much. So that's something that I picked up from him. I mean,
make it a little easier on yourself.
Make it a little easier on ourselves, yes.
Yeah.
Then after the pencils, I usually, again, scan them, send them to you, have you go over them, see if I need to make any kind of visual changes. And that's when we go into inking. Inking is typically, besides scripting, is usually the fastest, unless I have oh my goodness, when chapter 3 rolled around, all those speed lines I had to do. Speed lines are my nemesis. They are my worst enemy, but they look so good when you do them by hand.
Yeah.
When you're doing them the right way.
I mean, there's some amazing single panel, like full page shots in those chapters that there's so many lines coming off of those guys, and it's really impressive.
But then after all the inking is done, scan those in, and then the very fastest part is all the lettering and stuff. Lettering, I can usually pump out all 32 pages in about a day.
Okay.
So lettering following the script, that's definitely by far the easiest part and by far the fastest. So
okay. Now you do everything yourself except for the script. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I'm still doing the script, but I have people helping me out, bouncing ideas off of each other.
Right, but you don't have any assistance for the drawing part. That's what I mean.
No.
Okay. Because Toriyama had an assistant helping him with background art and with some of the inking.
Lucky bastard.
Okay, so now playing off of that, Kazo Biri on Twitter asked, "What's your favorite part of the manga making process?"
I do enjoy the scripting process because I honestly do love, because I found myself three, well, if I include you, four really, really talented script assistants, really guys who really appreciate, like a lot of people that I see who make these fan mangas, they only seem to appreciate the action of Dragon Ball. They don't appreciate, it doesn't feel like to me that they appreciate the storytelling elements of Toriyama. And these guys that I found that helped me write the script and help me edit the script, they really, really care about the story. the story means so much more to them than action set pieces do. And that means a lot to me because they're really focused on helping me make these characters instead of caricatures. And that's something that I see from like a lot of Dragon Ball original characters in mangas. They are less character and more caricature. They are flanderized character traits. Even Rigger was, my first original character, Rigger. He was really, very, very cliche when it comes to Dragon Ball OCs, especially in his original versions. He was smarmy, he was cocky, he smiled all the time. He was super duper powerful and, basically raffle stomped everybody, with minimal effort. He was interchangeable with just about anybody, but for some reason he was really, really endearing to a lot of people. And even nowadays, people, mention to me that they love the direction that I've taken Rigger and, explaining more of his backstory, giving him a lot more depth and more character. I've had so many more people email me and message me on Twitter and through Discord and everything, telling me that what I've done with Rigger like opened up their eyes and makes them want to look at their own characters and redo their own characters and make them less, I guess you could say, cliche. And that, to me, that means so much because I'm like, I mean, who am I? I'm a guy on the internet making a Dragon Ball fan manga, but these people are coming to me and saying that the work I do inspires them. And for anybody who makes a manga like that, that's really all you can hope for.
On that subject, the reception for this new definitive edition has been a positive one?
Overwhelmingly. I mean, we had, with anything that you put on the internet, there's going to be people who are nitpickers and naysayers. I mean, I really only have one off the top of my head who seemed to just go after the manga for absolutely nothing. I mean, he even went after me for my name. He said he hated my name. I mean, and there are a couple of people who prefer the original versions of the manga. They prefer my original drafts, but the original drafts just aren't what I wanted. They weren't what I really, really wanted to put out there. Like the version of Rigger, for example, in the definitive edition is basically exactly what I wanted out of Rigger. I'm not saying that there aren't cliche elements to him, even now. He's a super strong Saiyan who came out of nowhere, who has a tragic backstory. But in the original drafts, he was supposed to be this super strong Saiyan who came out of nowhere, who had a tragic backstory. But for a guy with a tragic backstory, he seemed to smile and joke and snark a lot. At least now you can see the effects of what his life has done to him.
Yeah, I saw someone mention that they really appreciated his relationship with his wife.
Yeah, that was the other thing is Sapari is an actual character now. She's not just sitting on the sidelines reading off power levels like an exposition machine. She's actually a fully defined character, and everybody who, like, especially in my Discord, everybody seems to love the dynamic between the two of them. And that makes me so happy because she is now a character and there are people who make fan art of her, and that's awesome.
Oh, that must be great to see.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a folder saved on my computer and on the DB New Age Facebook page of all kinds of different fan art, but to see especially Blackscape. Oh, Blackscape just like latched onto Sapari like real quick as soon as she I think it was by chapter 2, like he really, really latched onto Sapari. He really liked her. And she was, and like I've given her so much more personality and she interacts and she has cognitive function. And, and I just love that people are now like grabbing onto her and they actually like that she's a character now. And that makes me happy.
Well, that's really great to hear. I wanted to ask you about some business related questions. regarding New Age,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of people don't really understand where New Age comes from and how much sacrifice it requires of you to create.
Oh
So
yeah.
might seem obvious, but people might not even think about it. Is creating Dragon Ball New Age your full-time job?
In a manner, doing the manga in these 32 page chapters is very time and very labor intensive. But at the time, it's a full time job that I'm doing for nothing. I make nothing off of Dragon Ball New Age. The issue comes in that if I'm not at my regular full time job, I was working on Dragon Ball New Age full time. I was waking up at 9:30 in the morning, and by 10 o'clock, I was doing artwork. And then I would have to stop between 1 and 1:30 p.m. in order to get ready for my full-time job. Then by 2:30, I left for my full-time job. I was gone at my job till 11 o'clock. Then I would get home, and between 11:30 and midnight, I would start working on art again, and I wouldn't stop till anywhere between 2 and 4 a.m. every single day. And then on the weekends, sometimes I'd be putting in 16 hours
Mm.
just working on Dragon Ball New Age, and it left very little time for anything else. It got to the point where my missus was very upset with me because I didn't have time to do anything. There were a lot of times where my brother didn't want to come over because I was just buried nose deep in work, and
Mm.
it got to some points where I worked myself into exhaustion. I had a 5 day period where I only slept for 4 total hours. And my work one time almost sent me home because I had black bags under my eyes from not sleeping.
Wow.
Um, but
So why do you
the
do it?
because I love it, because I love Dragon Ball New Age. It's my baby, and it's the out of all of the things that I've started besides the card game that I've been working on for the better part of a decade, it's the only project that I've felt so passionate about that I've actually kept up with it.
Mm.
Recently, well, not even recently, this you were there, and you were actually one of the first people I came to in March when Viz issued those DMCA takedowns on DeviantArt and had the entire series scrubbed from DeviantArt. At that point, I almost gave up because it broke my heart.
Mm.
And I'd put in all that work, and then just all of a sudden it was all gone. But at the time, I was already considering like redoing Dragon Ball New Age and like doing it with better writing instead of just going back and editing a panel and some dialogue here and there. Just doing a complete rehaul, readjustment, and that's why I put so much time into it, because I just want it to be as good as I can. It's why I keep going back and rewriting it and
Mm.
redrawing it, because I just want it to be as best as I can for the people who read it.
Right. Well, there were two
And
things that stood out there. One is the word passion. And I remember from Latin, the word passion means that which we suffer for. And that seems to be like what you're doing with New Age, you know? And then the other thing is the artist's path, and that you keep refining yourself and you keep refining your art, and you want to go back and make it up to your current standard. But it sounds like the DMCA takedown by Viz might have been a blessing in disguise, because it gave you an opportunity to sort of hit the reset button and begin anew. How do you feel about that?
I do agree with that. Like I said, at the time, it did break my heart, but it at the same time, it gave me the incentive to do the definitive edition, to come out with these longer form chapters with better writing and basically restarting the story over with art up to my current standard, art that I could be proud of, and storytelling that I could be proud of. Yeah, I mean, even nowadays, even today, I don't hold any ill will against Viz for what they did. I had gotten into contact with Shueisha a long time ago when I first started printing out uh, Dragon Ball New Age mangas, and I told them if at any point they or Viz or anybody told me to stop, I would have. So when they issued that takedown, I didn't challenge it at all. But even
Well,
today, like I said, I don't harbor any ill will against them for what they did. They're a business, so
right.
you know.
Right. But now you're on the Tao of DragonBall.com and things are
Yes,
working out. So
indeed.
that's
I
good.
love having a dedicated website that people can go to because DeviantArt, as lovely as it was sometimes very hard for fans and readers to navigate. Having, the Tao of Dragon Ball there and having each chapter lined up, each page in order where they can just hit the next button and go to the next page, and they can comment on it right there and they can share links to it. That has been one of the biggest boons to the definitive edition for sure.
Mm. And also people sharing it on YouTube and their social media.
Oh my lord. Yeah, the I don't think I speak in any hyperbole when I say that I do believe that the definitive edition and Dragon Ball New Age today is more popular and known now than it ever has been before, thanks to a lot of these big time Dragon Ball YouTubers like Unreal Entertainment Gaming, Geekdom 101, and Mastar Media, and all these guys, doing reviews and commenting on it, Blackscape, all these people just going through and sharing, and just the compliments and the love and support those guys show means so much.
Mm.
And I can never thank any of those guys enough for what they did for me in my series.
And it's really a community effort. It's like you're the one putting your heart and soul into it, but then the readers are so engaged with the content that you're putting out and they're sharing it because they love it and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So I think it's really exciting to see. Things are evolving. It reminds me of the hype that was surrounding Toriyama's work when it was coming out. People were talking about it, and it's really great. Now, with all of that said, you are still struggling to create the content in part because of the requirements of surviving every month. So, is there a way that your fans can support you financially?
I do currently have a PayPal link in my Twitter, for people who want to make, one-time donations or whatever. But we are in the process. I'm slowly building it as I can, like I said, because I just have so much on my plate. But we are setting up a new Patreon page for Team New Age, which is me, the two other artists that I have who work on History of Rigor, and my cover artist, the two editors who are also my script assistants, who are going to be assisting me with the YouTube channel that I will be relaunching in the near future. So if they do want to help support me, they want to help support the other artists and the editors and the writers who work with me, they can just stay in tune with my Twitter, and I'll be posting links to the Patreon when it becomes live. And when my YouTube channel is up and running again, go and watch those videos, share those videos, subscribe, because I've already met the subscriber base to approve for monetization. Now I just need the watch hours. So once we start posting those videos and I get approved for the watch hours, then my YouTube content will be monetized. And
Right. So you're
so,
saying on YouTube you have to have 1,000 subscribers and a certain number of hours viewed by your fans in order to get money from those views.
in order to be approved for monetization before they can start
Right.
putting ads that I'll actually benefit from. But once we get that up and started, so hopefully we'll have some, income coming in from YouTube. We'll have income from Patreon. And if
So
at
is this
some
something
point,
you think you'd want to do full time at some point? If it
absolutely,
happened? Yeah.
absolutely. If Mastar Media, for example, has been dead set I was on a phone call with him for almost 2.5 hours, and he is dead set on trying to help me make YouTube and manga my full-time job within the
Hmm.
next 2 years.
Okay. Well, that'd be exciting. I mean, that'd be a huge shift, and you really following your path and being an
Yes.
artist. Tangentially related to that, will the New Age manga be available for purchase? I got a question from Tevin Daniels on Twitter. He wants to know if he can buy it in order to support you and have it available to read, offline.
Well, I know that the original draft that I did was available in the little mini mangas that I had on Amazon. But to be honest, doing it that way kind of paints a target on my back. I don't want to have those things constantly online available because it's a lot of drama that I don't want to invite from Viz or Shueisha. Now, I do plan on having some hard copies of Dragon Ball New Age, probably when the Rigor arc finishes, whether that'll be single chapters in bound form or the entire arc in a single book. I will have those available at conventions, but like selling them online, unless it's my original work, like my completely original mangas that I'm also working on, I want to try and refrain from selling those things online. It's different when young Gigi and Toyotaro do it because they live in Japan where they have a lot of protections from that. Even the guys in Dragon Ball Multiverse, being from France, they have a lot more protections against that kind of thing than I do.
Mm.
Living here in America, they come down on you like the hand of Kami himself. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. But at the same time, I do want them to be available for people. So if you want to have the hardcover versions when they do become available, unfortunately, the only way I'll be able to get them to you is if you come and see me at a convention, because that right now is the only way I would feel comfortable actually selling them.
Mm. What about like direct mail order? If somebody requested a book from you, could you sign it and ship it to them?
It's possible. I would have to look into the logistics of that.
Mm.
Again, it's like I said, I know I can get away with selling limited copies of them at conventions privately.
Okay.
It's selling them online where I start to invite the wrath of lawyers and 800-pound gorillas, and
Yeah,
I
right.
I I just I just kind of want to avoid that. I
Okay.
I understand that my fans and my readers want it, but at the same time, I do have to try and tiptoe around within the confines of the law.
Okay. So for the foreseeable future, you will only be able to view it at thedaoofdragonball.com.
Yes.
So let's go jump back to a few story questions. I only got a few left from readers on Twitter. Evie Mara at Anion asks, why did you decide to have Rigger fight in Super Saiyan forms at this point in the story? I liked how in your original New Age manga, Rigger had mastered every form to the point where his body acclimated to it and he could access his full power in base form, a la Ultimate Gohan.
It basically came because I didn't want to redo the definitive edition and basically just make it a complete retrain of what we saw in the original versions, in my original drafts. I wanted to throw some curveballs at people. And everybody like wondered if Rigger had other Super Saiyan forms besides the one Super Saiyan 5 form that he showed in the original drafts. And I worked out some things with the lore. My guys were all like, well, why doesn't he transform instead of making his base power level so monstrous that he just stomps anybody without really having to do anything? Why not have him exert a little bit more effort? And in my opinion, him transforming into True Super Saiyan and True Super Saiyan 4, as we recently saw in Chapter 6, for me it's a lot more interesting. He has again, it feels like he has more depth to him rather than just staying in base form and having one transformation. Now he has these other forms, and now there's more intrigue about it. There's people who, now wonder, what's the secret behind these forms? What do these forms do? How did he get these forms? And I think that adds a little bit of mystique to him. And
Yeah. Keeps people interested.
yes.
Yeah. All right. That makes perfect sense. At Johnny the Fifth wants to know, since Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods happened in the New Age timeline, will we get to see Super Saiyan God derived forms? Perhaps Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan 4? Can't wait for the next chapter.
As far as Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan 4, I wouldn't hold my breath. I know Young Gigi recently did that in, I believe it was his Dragon Ball Versus manga, where he had Super Saiyan 4 Goku versus Goku Black, and they had basically Super Saiyan Blue 4. I wasn't really a big fan of that. I don't want to give away spoilers, but I can say that godly energy will be a factor in the future.
Oh, okay. All right. A little teaser of something to come. That sounds exciting. And then last question is from Alex Mason at Unreal Ent Gaming, who I'm sure you are familiar with.
Indeed.
He asked, where do you see yourself and your work in the next 10 years going forward? And what does Dragon Ball New Age mean to you?
Well, as far as what it means to me, I've spoke on it earlier in the interview that this is my baby, and it's my love letter to Akira Toriyama and to Dragon Ball itself. I think besides Spider-Man, Dragon Ball is the most important fictional series in my life. As far as where I'll be in 10 years, I don't even know where I'm going to be in the next 10 months.
Yeah.
But if, and this is a big if all goes according to plan, hopefully within at least the next 2 years, maybe sooner, with the support of the community, with the support of, readers and fans, hopefully within the next 2 years, I'll be back to doing this full time and making a living off of what I love instead of it just being my hobby. And having to wake up and scrounge what little time that I can to do my art and have a life, and then go and enslave myself in a factory for 8.5 hours a day.
Right. Yeah, I imagine expressing your artistic self is a lot more enjoyable than working in a factory.
It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. My dad taught me the value of working, with my hands and, actually doing things. But he also knew that art and manga and comic books were always my passion. I never saw him more proud when I showed him the very first issue of Dragon Ball New Age after I had it officially published, when I self-published it. He was so proud of that, and he was so happy for me. It's going to take a community effort. I can't do it on my own, but within 2 years, hopefully, this will be what I do for a living.
Well, that's great to hear. And I think all your fans out there want to see that happen, want to be a part of it. It really is a big, giant Genki Dama, spirit bomb coming your way. So keep holding your arms up and it'll get there.
Give me your energy, please. I need it.
All right. Well, thanks, Malik. This was a great conversation. And I learned a lot from it and enjoyed it. I'm sure that listeners did too. And good luck with Chapter 7 and onward. And I know everybody will be watching.
Also, really quick before I go, as far as Chapter 7 goes, I mentioned earlier in the interview that the script for Chapter 7 is indeed finished. Me and my script assistants are working on the next couple of chapters. We want to get a couple of chapters in the hopper and written and done. That way, for the next couple of months, I can focus solely on getting the art for those particular chapters done. And I can say that we have, at least in Chapter 7, I think you guys will really, really enjoy chapter 7. We got a lot of surprises coming, and oh man, that I want to spoil so much, but I can't.
Oh, you better not. You better
No, no,
not.
no, no, no. But
We like those
I
cliffhanger endings.
I I
Choice.
really think you guys will like the. I mean, if you've read the original draft of the story, you sort of know, but I'll let you know right now, you don't know everything.
All right, that sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to it, and I know everybody else is. So thanks, Malik.
Yeah, thank you very much.